I did not save him. I took from him. That is the truth. That is how it started. The ambulance smelled like old sweat and cheap disinfectant. It was late. The city was just a dark, wet noise outside. We got the call, overdose. Another one. They happen all the time in this part of the city. Nobody cares much. My partner, Frank, stayed by the door. He was eating a cold sandwich. He did not look at the body. He did not look at me. That was good. Frank never looked too close. The man on the floor was young, maybe 20. He was pale like milk. His eyes were open, but they did not see anything. He was gone. He had been gone for a long time. The needle was still in his arm. It was a dirty room full of trash and bad air. I knelt down. I put on my gloves. I did the things I had to do. I checked his pulse. Nothing. I checked his breathing. Nothing. I wrote it down on my clipboard, time of death. I wrote down his name if he had one. He did not, just male unknown. Frank called it in. We got a DOA, looks like a bad batch. No signs of struggle. I stood up. I looked at the man. He was just a piece of the city's garbage. Nobody would miss him. Nobody would ask questions. He was perfect. I opened my medical bag. It was clean, white, and full of things that save people. But I was not saving anyone. I took out a large syringe. It was new. I took out a special blood bag. It was the kind we use for transfusions, but this one was empty. It had a clean label on it. I knelt down again. I found a good vein in the man's arm. It was a dark blue line. I put the needle in. It was easy. I am a paramedic. I know how to find a vein in the dark. I pulled the plunger back slowly. The blood came out. It was thick and dark like old oil. It was full of bad things. It was full of the poison that killed him. It was full of the sickness that lived in the dirty streets. I filled the syringe. Then I pushed the blood into the clean bag. I did it again and again. I took a lot, more than a pint. I needed enough. I watched the bag fill up. It was heavy and warm in my hand. It was not a life-saving thing. It was a promise. I sealed the bag. I took a black marker. I wrote a number on the label, 1 asterisk. Then I wrote a name, not the dead man's name. I wrote Alara asterisk. Frank was still by the door. He was done with his sandwich. Ready to roll, Maya. Yeah, I said. My voice was flat. Just cleaning up the kit. I put the bag in a special, small cooler I kept in my kit. It was a secret cooler. It looked like it held medicine that needed to stay cold. It did. It held the medicine for my revenge. We left the room. The city kept making its dark, wet noise. The police came. They did their job. They took pictures. They did not care much either. They wrote it down as another sad story. They did not look for who sold the drugs. They did not look for the family that was not there. They never looked close enough. That is what Julian Vance taught me. Julian Vance. The name is like a piece of glass in my throat. He is the son of Senator Robert Vance, a big man, a powerful man, a man who thinks the rules are for other people. Alara was my little sister. She was 16. She was not a piece of the city's garbage. She was bright. She was loud. She was going to leave this city and go to a big school. It was a Tuesday night. She was walking home from her friend's house. She was crossing the street. The light was green for her. Julian Vance was driving his new black car. It was fast. He was drunk. He was talking on his phone. He did not stop. The sound was terrible, like a giant piece of wood breaking. I was off duty. I was home. The police came to my door. They told me. I went to the street. It was already clean. They had washed the blood away, but I saw the place where she fell. I saw the small, silver locket she always wore. It was bent and broken on the curb. I went to the police station. I screamed. I cried. I showed them the witness reports. 3 people saw the black car. They saw the license plate. They saw the driver. Julian Vance. But the next day, the reports changed. The witnesses got scared. They forgot what they saw. The license plate was wrong. The car was not black. It was a dark blue sedan. The driver was unknown. Senator Vance made it all go away. He used his money. He used his power. He used his big, fake smile. The police chief called it a tragic accident. He said the driver was probably scared and would come forward. He never did. The case was closed in 3 weeks. Ilara was just a file, just a number. I went to the funeral. I did not cry much. I was too cold. I felt like all the heat had gone out of my body. I felt like I was full of ashes. I looked at the senator on TV. He was talking about community safety. He was talking about reforming our youth. He was talking about his son, Julian, who was going to a special school far away to find himself. I knew then, the law was broken, the system was dirty, it was all a lie. If the city would not give me justice, I would take it from the city. My apartment is small. It is on the 10th floor. I have a view of the city. It looks like 1,000,000 dark windows. I went to my kitchen. I opened the pantry. Behind the cans of soup and the boxes of pasta, there was a false wall. I pulled it open. Inside was a small, white medical refrigerator. It was silent. It was cold. It was my vault. I took out the small cooler. I took out the blood bag, *1*. I put it in the refrigerator. It looked like a bag of juice, but it was not. It was a weapon. I sat down at my table. I took out my notebook. It was a plain, black notebook. I wrote down the date. I wrote down the location of the call. I wrote down the man's condition. Bag 001, male, 20s, overdose, severe systemic infection, sepsis, unknown viral load, high risk of contamination. I closed the book. I had a year. Julian Vance was away at his special school. He was safe. He was clean. He was waiting for his big comeback. I was waiting too. I was collecting. I am a paramedic. I see the worst of the city every night. The people who fall through the cracks. The people who are forgotten. The people who are sick because nobody cares. Julian Vance killed my sister and walked away clean. He thinks he is better than the city. He thinks he is clean. I will make him the city. I will make him dirty. I will fill him with the ashes of the people he ignored. I will make him pay with every sickness I can find. I will make him a number, just like Ilara. I looked at the refrigerator. 1 bag, 14,999 words to go. The work had just begun. The next bag came 3 weeks later. It was a woman. She was old. She lived alone in a small room with no heat. She had been sick for a long time. She had a terrible cough. Her skin was yellow. Frank was outside smoking. He hated these calls. I went in. She was still alive. But barely. Her liver was failing. She had a bad case of hepatitis C. It was eating her up from the inside. I did what I could. I gave her oxygen. I started an IV drip. I called the hospital. But before we put her on the stretcher, I took my syringe. I told myself I was taking a sample for the hospital lab. I was a professional. I was a medic. I drew the blood. It was a pale, sickly yellow-red. It was full of the poison that was killing her. I filled the second bag, 2*. I put it in the cooler. I put the cooler back in the ambulance. When we got to the hospital, I handed the woman over. I gave the nurses my report. I was calm. I was good at my job. I went to the bathroom. I took the bag out of the cooler. I put it in my locker. Later, when my shift was over, I drove home. I put 2 next to *00, 1 in the cold, white vault. I wrote in my black notebook. Bag 002, female, 60s, liver failure, advanced hepatitis C, slow, silent killer. 2 bags, 2 promises. The city was full of gifts. All I had to do was keep my eyes open. All I had to do was wait for the next one to fall. I was not a hero. I was a collector, and I was just getting started. The third bag was the worst. It was a man who lived under the bridge. He had a terrible skin infection. It was everywhere. It was red and angry. It was a kind of bacteria that eats the flesh, necrotizing fasciitis. The doctors call it the flesh-eating disease. He was screaming when we got there, not from the pain, but from the fever. He was burning up. Frank looked sick. We need to move fast, Maya. This guy is going septic. We worked fast. We cut his clothes away. The smell was awful, like rotten meat and old garbage. I started 2 IV lines. I gave him the strong drugs. I was trying to save him. I was. But I knew he would not make it, not this time. The infection was too deep. It was too fast. While Frank was calling the hospital, I took my chance. I drew the blood. It was thick and cloudy. It was full of the bacteria. It was the most dangerous one yet. I filled *3. I put it in the cooler. We rushed him to the hospital. He died on the table an hour later. I went home. I put *3 in the vault. I wrote in my black notebook. Bag 003 ** male, 40s, severe necrotizing fasciitis, highly aggressive, fast-acting bacteria. I looked at the 3 bags. They were cold. They were waiting. Julian Vance was still safe, still clean, still laughing somewhere far away. But the city was preparing a gift for him, and I was the delivery girl. I was the one who would make sure he got the full dose of the city's forgotten pain. I closed the vault. I went to bed. I did not dream. I just waited for the next call, the next gift, the next bag of ashes. The year was long. It was a year of waiting. It was a year of watching. My life was a lie. I put on my uniform every day. I drove the ambulance. I helped people. I held hands. I told people it would be okay. I was good at my job, too good. But every call was a chance. Every sick person was a new piece for my puzzle. I saw the city's dirt up close. The rich people never see it. They drive on clean streets. They live in clean houses. They think the sickness is far away. It is not. It is everywhere. It lives in the cracks. It lives in the forgotten places. Julian Vance put a Lara in the dirt. Now I would put the dirt in Julian Vance. I kept my notebook close. It was my secret book. I wrote down the details. I wrote down the science. I had to be smart. This could not look like murder. It had to look like a terrible, rare accident, a curse from God. I needed a mix, a cocktail, not just one thing. One thing is easy to find. Many things are confusing. Doctors get confused when the body fights too many wars at once. Bag 4 came from a man who was coughing blood. He had a bad lung disease, tuberculosis. It is old and strong. It hides in the body. It waits. I found him in a shelter. He was cold. He was dying slowly. I drew his blood. It was thin and weak. I felt bad for him, but I did not stop. Bag 4, male, 50s, advanced tuberculosis. A slow, persistent killer, hard to treat. Bag was from a young woman. She was a prostitute. She was very sick. She had a disease that made her skin break out in terrible sores. It was a disease that attacks the brain and the heart if you let it. Syphilis. She was scared. I told her I would help her. I did help her. I took her to the hospital. But first, I took my sample. Bag 5, female, 20s, late-stage syphilis, attacks the nervous system, causes madness and pain. I learned to be very fast. I learned to be very quiet. Frank never saw anything. He was too busy looking at his phone or drinking coffee. People trust the uniform. They trust the medic. They think we are only here to help. I was helping. I was helping Alara. I spent my nights reading. I read old medical books. I read about diseases that were almost gone. I read about how they spread. I read about how they killed. I needed things that would work together, things that would confuse the doctors, things that would make Julian Vance suffer. I wanted him to feel the city's pain, the pain of the people he and his father walked over. I wanted him to feel the fire of the fever, the cold of the sweat, the confusion of the mind breaking. I wanted him to know what it felt like to be forgotten. I found a man with a rare blood infection. It was a parasite. It made his body weak and his stomach hurt all the time. He was from a country far away. The doctors here did not know what it was. They just gave him pills. I got bag 6 from him. It was a gift, a rare, confusing gift. Bag 6, male, 30s, rare parasitic blood infection, causes extreme weakness and organ failure. I had 6 bags now, 6 promises. They sat in my cold vault. They were my secret army. The news started talking about Julian Vance again. He was coming back. He was reformed. He was going to speak at a big event, a charity gala for youth in need. It was a joke. He was the one who needed to be put in need. Senator Vance was throwing a party for his son. A big, clean, expensive party. I knew I had to be there. I started working on my plan. I used my connections. I told my boss I wanted to work the big events. Good overtime, I said. Good exposure for the service. My boss liked that. He liked the idea of the ambulance being seen at the fancy parties. I got the assignment. I would be on the medical standby team for the Vance Foundation Gala. My heart beat fast. It was time. The year of waiting was over. The last bag was the most important. I needed something that would break his body's defenses, something that would make the other sicknesses run wild. I found it in a hospital waste bin. It was not blood. It was a small vial. It was supposed to be thrown away. It was a sample from a patient with a very bad immune disease, a disease that makes the body forget how to fight. I took it. I put it in a sterile container. It was the key. It was the thing that would open the door for all the other poisons. I went home. I took out all 6 bags. They were cold. They were ready. I put them on my clean metal table. I looked at them. Sepsis, hepatitis C flesh-eating bacteria, tuberculosis, syphilis, parasites, and the immune breaker. It was a beautiful, terrible mix. I took a large, new IV bag. I opened the seal. I started mixing. I poured the dark, thick blood of 1 into the clear bag, then the pale, yellow blood of 2, then the cloudy, thick blood of 3. It was like making a dark, terrible soup. The colors swirled together, the diseases mixed, the ashes of the city became one. I added the immune breaker last. It was a clear liquid. It disappeared into the dark mix. I sealed the bag. I labeled it with a fake name, Saline Solutions Standard Drip. I put a date on it. Everything looked right. Everything looked professional. I held the bag up to the light. It was heavy. It was dark. It was full of death. I whispered to the bag, "This is for you, Julian, from Alara, and from the city you killed." I put the bag in my special cooler. I packed my uniform. I sharpened my needle. I was ready to go to the party. I was ready to deliver my gift. The year was over. The time for justice had come. It was going to be a very bad night for Julian Vance, and a very good night for me. The Vance Foundation Gala was held in the city's biggest, fanciest hotel ballroom. It was all glass and gold. The air smelled like expensive perfume and fake smiles. I stood by the back wall near the kitchen entrance. My uniform was clean and pressed. I looked like I belonged. I looked like I was there to help. I was not. I watched the people. They were all clean. They were all rich. They were all laughing. They were the people who ran the city, the people who let Alara die. Senator Vance was on the stage. He was a big man with a loud voice. He was talking about his son. "My boy, Julian, has been away. He has learned so much. He is a reformed youth. He is ready to give back to this great city." The people clapped. They cheered. Julian Vance walked onto the stage. He looked perfect. He wore a black suit that cost more than my ambulance. His hair was slick. His smile was wide and empty. He looked like a prince. He looked like the man who left my sister, broken on the street. My hands were steady. My heart was a cold stone in my chest. I had my medical bag with me. It was heavy. The special cooler with the IV bag was inside. The bag was waiting. I looked at the stage. Julian was shaking hands. He was taking pictures. He was untouchable. I needed to get him alone. I needed a reason to put a needle in his arm. I walked toward the back of the ballroom. I went into the service hallway. I knew this hotel. I had been here before on calls. I found the air vent. It was big and metal. It was for the air conditioning. I took a small silver tube from my pocket. It was not a smoke bomb. It was a special irritant. It was non-toxic. It would not hurt anyone. It would just make them cough. A lot. I opened the vent cover a little. I pushed the tube inside. I pressed the button. A fine, invisible mist went into the air system. I walked away fast. I went back to my post by the kitchen. It started slow. One person coughed, then two, then a small group near the stage started to rub their eyes. The senator was still talking. And so, Julian will lead our new initiative. Then a big loud cough, and another. The air in the ballroom started to feel thick. People were fanning their faces. They were looking around, confused. The senator stopped talking. He looked angry. Julian Vance started to cough too. It was a deep, wet sound. He put his hand to his throat. "What is this?" someone yelled. The crowd started to move. Not panic, but confusion. They were rich people. They were not used to things going wrong. The senator grabbed Julian's arm. "Get him out of here. Get him some air." That was my cue. I pushed through the crowd. I was fast. I was wearing the uniform. People moved out of my way. "Medic, clear the way. We need to get him to clean area," I yelled. I reached Julian and the senator. "I am paramedic Maya," I said. My voice was calm and strong. "He needs to be checked. It could be an allergic reaction or a small gas leak." The senator looked at me. He was scared for his son. That was good. Take him now," the senator ordered. I put my hand on Julian's back. He was coughing hard. He was leaning on me. "This way, sir. We have a quiet room in the back." I led him through the service hallway. Frank was nowhere to be seen. He was probably still outside, waiting for the real emergency. We went into a small, clean storage room. It was quiet. Julian leaned against a shelf. He was still coughing. "I'm fine," he gasped. "Just the smoke. I hate cheap air." "I need to be sure, Mr. Vance," I said. I was all business. "Your heart rate is up. Your blood pressure is probably high. We need to get some fluids in you to flush out any irritants." He looked annoyed. "A drip, really. I just need a glass of water." "Standard protocol," I lied. "Just a quick saline flush. 5 minutes. It will make you feel much better for your big speech." He sighed. He was too arrogant to argue with a medic. He just wanted the coughing to stop. "Fine, make it fast." I opened my medical bag. I took out the special IV bag, the one labeled saline solution, the one full of the city's ashes. I hung it on a hook on the wall. I took out a clean needle and the tubing. I was so calm. My hands did not shake. I looked at his arm. It was smooth and pale, a rich man's arm. "Hold still, sir. Just a small pinch." I tied the tourniquet. I cleaned the spot with an alcohol wipe. I looked at the vein. It was perfect. I pushed the needle in. Julian barely flinched. He was still focused on his coughing. The needle was in. The line was clear. I turned the small roller clamp. The dark, terrible liquid started to flow. It was slow. It was steady. It was going right into his clean, rich blood. I watched his face. He did not feel anything yet, just the cold liquid entering his vein. "That's it," I said softly. "Just relax, it will be over soon." I looked at the bag. The level was dropping. The poison was entering his body. I thought of Alara. I thought of the sound of the car. I thought of the police chief's lie. I thought of the man on the floor, the woman with the yellow skin, the man under the bridge. Their pain, their sickness, their forgotten lives. It was all flowing into Julian Vance. I closed the clamp. The bag was half empty. That was enough, more than enough. I pulled the needle out. I put a small bandage on the spot. "There you go, Mr. Vance. You should feel better now." He was still a little pale, but the coughing had stopped. The irritant had faded. "Thanks, Doc," he said, not looking at me. He was already thinking about his speech. "It's paramedic, sir," I corrected him, "and you're welcome." I packed my bag. I put the empty, contaminated IV bag back in the cooler. No evidence. I walked him back toward the ballroom. "You go get back on that stage, Mr. Vance," I said. "You have a lot of life to live." He smiled his empty smile. "I plan to." I watched him walk back into the light. I turned and walked the other way, out the back door, into the dark, wet city. The revenge was not over. It had just begun. The contamination was complete. Now I just had to wait for the ashes to burn. I did not go home right away. I drove the ambulance back to the station. I cleaned my kit. I made sure the cooler was locked in my locker. I was calm, too calm. It was like the world had slowed down. I went home. I took a shower. I washed the smell of the rich people off my skin. I sat in my small apartment and waited. I did not watch TV. I did not read. I just sat. I knew it would not be fast. The diseases I chose were slow. They were tricky. They liked to hide. The first sign came 3 days later. I was on my lunch break. I was scrolling through the news on my phone. Vance postpones public appearances due to bad flu. The article had a picture of Julian. He looked pale, even in the photo. The senator said his son had a very aggressive flu. He said Julian was resting at home. I smiled. It was a cold, thin smile. The sepsis was starting. The body was fighting the first wave of the bad blood. It was a fever. It was chills. It was the body saying something is wrong, something is very wrong. I knew what was coming next. A week later, the news was worse. Julian Vance, hospitalized with mysterious ailment. Now they were scared. The fever did not go away. It got worse. The article said the doctors were baffled. They were running tests. They thought it might be a rare tropical virus. They thought it might be a strange autoimmune disease. They did not think it was the city. I called my friend, Dr. Chen. He works at the big hospital where they took Julian. He is a good man. He owes me a favor from a bad call a few months ago. Maya, he said, you won't believe what's going on here, that Vance kid. He's a mess. What's wrong with him? I asked. My voice was just curious. Everything. He has a raging fever. His white blood cell count is through the roof, but they can't find the source. They are pumping him full of antibiotics, but nothing works. Maybe it's viral, I suggested. We thought that, but now his liver is starting to fail. He's turning yellow, Maya, jaundice, and his skin. He has these strange lesions, like old sores. It doesn't make sense. I closed my eyes. I saw my notebook in my mind. Sepsis, the fever. Hepatitis C, the yellow skin, the failing liver. Syphilis, the strange lesions. The cocktail was working. The diseases were fighting each other inside him, and Julian was losing. That sounds terrible, Chen, I said. Keep me updated. I worry about the good doctors. Worry about the kid, Chen said. He's dying, Maya, slowly, and we don't know how to stop it. Tragic, I said. Just tragic. I hung up the phone. I felt a wave of cold wash over me. It was not guilt. It was satisfaction. The next few days were a blur of news reports and calls to Chen. The senator was frantic. He brought in doctors from all over the world, the best money could buy. But money could not buy a cure for the city's rot. The doctors were fighting a ghost. They would treat the fever and the liver would get worse. They would treat the liver and the skin lesions would spread. The flesh-eating bacteria, bag 3, was the worst. It was not killing him fast. It was just making small, deep wounds that would not heal. They had to cut away small pieces of his skin. The news said he was in critical but stable condition. A lie. He was in a war he could not win. I imagined the bacteria moving through his clean, rich body. It was like a tiny army of the forgotten. They were eating his life. I thought about Alara. Her life was taken in 1 second, a clean, fast death. Julian's death would be 1,000 small cuts, 1,000 reminders of the people he never saw. One night I was driving the ambulance past the hospital. It was dark. The lights were bright. I saw the senator. He was standing outside talking on his phone. He looked old. He looked tired. His suit was wrinkled. He was shouting, "I don't care what it costs. Fix him. He's my son." I pulled the ambulance over. I watched him. He was suffering. Good. He thought he could cover up a death. He thought he could buy silence. He was wrong. The city always collects its debts, and I was the one holding the bill. I drove away. I did not need to see Julian yet. I needed him to cook a little longer. I needed the poison to settle deep in his bones. I needed him to be ready for the final twist, the moment he would know why he was dying. I would not let him die confused. He had to know it was Alara. He had to know it was justice. I drove toward the dark parts of the city, the parts where the forgotten people lived. I was their angel of death, and I was delivering their message. The revenge was perfect. It was slow. It was confusing. It was public. And it was all thanks to the city he thought he was better than. I smiled again, the cold, thin smile. It was the only way I knew how to smile now. 2 weeks after the gala, Julian Vance was a ghost. He was in a special, private room in the hospital. Security was tight. The senator was always there, or a guard was. But I had my uniform. The uniform is a key. It opens doors. I told the guard I was the relief medic. I said I was checking the equipment in the room. He barely looked at me. He was bored. I walked into the room. It was quiet. The machines made soft, steady noises. Beep, beep, beep. Julian was in the bed. He was thin. His skin was a terrible yellow color. His eyes were sunk deep in his head. He was hooked up to many tubes. He was not the perfect prince anymore. He was just a sick boy. He looked at me. He did not know me. He did not remember the medic from the party. He did not remember anything but the pain. "Water," he whispered. His voice was dry and weak. I walked to his side. I looked at the charts. The doctors were still fighting the wrong war. They were treating the symptoms. They were not treating the cause. I took a small cup of ice chips. I held it to his lips. "Thank you," he mumbled. I pulled up a chair. I sat down. I looked at him. I looked at the wreckage of the man who killed my sister. "The doctors are confused," I said. My voice was soft. It was the voice I used to calm scared patients. He closed his eyes. "They don't know what it is. They say it's 100 things." "It is," I said. "It is 100 things. It is the city." He opened his eyes. He looked at me, confused. "What?" I leaned closer. I put my hand on his arm. I felt the heat of the fever coming off his skin. "Do you remember Alara?" I asked. The name hit him like a punch. His eyes went wide. He tried to pull his arm away, but he was too weak. Who are you?" he gasped. "I am Maya," I said. "I am her sister." His face went white, even under the yellow skin. He tried to call out. He tried to move. The machines started to beep faster. "Don't bother," I said. "The guard is outside. He thinks I'm checking your drip." I pointed to the small bandage on his inner elbow, the spot where I put the needle in. "Do you remember the party, Julian? The coughing, the medic who gave you the quick saline flush?" He stared at the bandage. The memory was coming back, the confusion, the relief. "It wasn't saline," I whispered. "It was a gift from the city you and your father forgot." I leaned in close, so only he could hear the terrible truth. "That was the blood of the people you killed, the people your father ignored, the man who overdosed, the woman with the bad liver, the man under the bridge with the flesh-eating disease." I watched his eyes. The fear was beautiful. It was pure. "They thought they could bury the truth," I said. "They washed Alara's blood off the street, but the city is dirty, Julian, and now you are dirty too." He started to shake. He tried to scream, but only a dry, rattling sound came out. "It's in your veins, Julian, the ashes of the city, the ashes of my sister. It's eating you from the inside out. That fever is the sepsis. That yellow skin is the hepatitis. Those sores are the syphilis and the flesh-eater." I stood up. I looked down at him. He was crying. Silent, weak tears. "You left her to die alone in the street," I said. "Now you will die alone in this clean, expensive room, and every day you will know why." I picked up my bag. I was done. "Tell your father," I said, walking to the door. "Tell him the debt is paid." I walked out. The guard nodded at me. "Everything okay, Doc?" he asked. "Just a little fever spike," I said. "He's resting now." I walked away. I did not look back. The confession was made. The revenge was complete. Now I just had to wait for the final curtain. I felt lighter than I had in a year. The cold stone in my chest was finally starting to melt. Julian Vance knew the truth, and the truth was killing him. It was the most perfect justice I could have ever asked for. Julian Vance died 3 days after my visit. The news called it a tragic, rapid decline. They said his body just gave up. They said the doctors were heartbroken that they could not save the senator's son. They did not know that the doctors were fighting a war with a ghost army. They did not know that the ghost army was winning. I heard the news on the radio in the ambulance. Frank was driving. He shook his head. "Poor kid," Frank said. "All that money, all that power, couldn't save him from a bad flu." "No," I said. "Some things money can't fix." I felt nothing. No joy, no sadness. Just a cold, clean emptiness. The debt was paid. The funeral was a big show. The senator cried on TV. He talked about his son's bright future and how God works in mysterious ways. I watched it from my small apartment. He was still lying, still acting. But I knew the truth. I knew that in his last days, Julian had told his father what I said. The senator knew. He knew his son was killed by the city's forgotten. He knew the death was a message. I had one thing left to do, the final delivery. I went to my vault. I took out the special cooler. It was empty now. I took the last, empty IV bag, the one that had held the terrible cocktail. I washed it out with clean water. I dried it. I took my black marker. I wrote on the label, not a number, just a name. ELRA. I sealed the bag. It was light. It was clean. It was a symbol. I put on my uniform one last time for this job. I drove to the senator's office building. It was a tall, glass tower in the clean part of the city. I walked past the security desk. The guard stopped me. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "I have a delivery for Senator Vance," I said. I held up the bag. It looked like a medical sample. "It's urgent, personal." The guard looked at my uniform. He looked at the bag. He did not want to touch it. "Wait here," he said. He called upstairs. A minute later, a nervous-looking man in a suit came down. He was the senator's aide. "The senator is in a meeting," the aide said. "I can take that." "No," I said. My voice was firm. "This is a personal delivery from the Vance Foundation Gala medical team. It must go directly to his desk." The aide looked at the bag. He looked at my cold eyes. He saw something he did not like. "Follow me," he said. We went up in the elevator. The office was big and quiet. It smelled like leather and power. The aide opened the door to the senator's private office. The senator was not there. "Just put it on his desk," the aide whispered. He wanted me gone. I walked to the big, polished desk. There was a picture frame on it, a picture of Julian Vance, smiling, clean before. I placed the empty blood bag right next to the picture. The name ELARA was facing the senator's chair. "Delivery complete," I said. I turned and walked out. I walked out of the building. The sun was shining. The city was loud. I was free. I drove back to the station. I went to my locker. I took off my uniform. I folded it neatly. I was not a medic anymore. I was just Maya. I had done what the law could not. I had found justice in the dirt. The revenge was not just for Alara. It was for the man who overdosed, the woman with the yellow skin, the man under the bridge. They were all avenged. Their ashes were in his veins. I walked out of the station. I did not look back. The city is still dirty. The corruption is still there, but one piece of trash is gone. I put my keys in my pocket. I started walking. I could finally breathe. The cold, clean emptiness was a good feeling. The story was over. The debt was paid. I was done.